Jack Hargrave rode hard under the fading afternoon sun, the deed to his new life folded in his coat pocket. Lone Star Bank had promised him an abandoned spread, empty house, neglected pasture, a place to start over. But as he crested the last ridge, he slowed. Smoke curled from the chimney. Fresh laundry snapped on a line between two oak trees. 3 horses stood tied at the rail. The place was alive. He urged his gelding closer, scanning the yard. A garden lay neat and green beside the porch, chickens scratching in the dust. Whoever lived here wasn't squatting for the week. They'd been here a long time. The front door swung open before he could dismount. A tall woman with dark hair and a rifle in hand stepped onto the porch. Her green eyes locked on him. "You're on private property?" she called, voice carrying like a whip crack. Jack touched the brim of his hat. "Ma'am, I think there's been some mistake. I bought this place fair and square. Got the papers right here." A second figure joined her, a younger woman, lean and watchful, her hand resting near the revolver on her hip. The first woman descended the steps, boots hitting the packed earth with purpose. "Name's Josie Rollins. This land's been ours 20 years, never left, never sold." Jack felt his gut tighten. "The bank said it'd been abandoned over a decade." Josie stopped 10 feet from his stirrup, eyes like cold fire. "The bank says a lot of things. Most of 'em lies." From the porch, the younger woman spoke for the first time, her voice low but steady. "If you're smart, stranger, you'll turn that horse around." Jack glanced at the house, the land, the 2 women watching him like hawks. One thing was certain. The bank had sold him more than a ranch. It had sold him a fight. Jack swung down from the saddle slow, palms open, the way a man does when he wants talk before trouble. He eased the folded deed from his coat and held it where the light could catch the seal. Lone Star Bank, signed 3 days past by Manager Luther, witnessed and stamped. Josie didn't flinch. Stamps are cheap. She reached inside her vest and drew out a yellowed paper wrapped in oilcloth. The folds had been mended with thread, the edges soft from years of handling. She unrolled it across the porch rail, the ink faded but proud. "Thomas Rollins, my father, took title in, 51 from a judge who still had a spine. Fee simple, no liens, no mortgage, no surrender." Cora stepped down a plank, keeping one shoulder toward him, her eyes never still. "Garden, chickens, new shingles, full woodpile," she said, almost to herself. Not the signs of an empty house. Jack set his jaw. Maybe there's a record wrong in town, ledger mixed, clerk lazy. Josie's laugh had no mirth in it. Clerks don't mix whole families off their land. Jack studied both documents, the new and the old, and felt a cold line run through his middle. His deed wore a brown tint like old paper, but the fibers were crisp beneath his thumb. The signature shone darker than the body text, as if laid down yesterday, because it had been. "Ink's fresh," he muttered. "Bank's been selling the same places again and again," Cora said. "Cash only, quick possession. They send men with papers, then send the sheriff when folks won't budge. Some ride away ashamed, some come back with friends and guns." Josie's gaze held him like a spur. "Which kind are you, Mr. Hargrave?" Jack looked past them to the house that was meant to be his and felt the quiet dignity pressed into every board. He pictured Luther's jittering smile at the counter, the hasty handshake, the insistence on money up front. A man could lie into your face and call it business. "I don't aim to steal a home from anyone," he said finally. "If your deed stands, mine's not worth kindling. But that means the bank sold me wind." Cora's hand brushed the butt of her revolver. "Wind that cuts." Josie refolded her father's deed with the care of a prayer. "We've stood our ground before. Each time, the price rises." "What price now?" $200 by sundown," she answered. "So they say, for taxes that don't exist." Jack opened his mouth, then stilled. Out beyond the cottonwoods, the road lifted a thin ribbon of dust into the hot blue. One rider. Fast. Purposeful. Josie saw it too. Her jaw tightened. "Hank Maddox," she said. "The bank's leash and teeth." Jack slid his thumb under his belt and felt the worn leather give. He had a deed, 2 truths, and a storm riding in. "Best decide quick what kind of man you are, Mr. Hargrave," Cora murmured. The hoofbeats drew nearer, steady as a drum. The rider's silhouette sharpened as he closed the distance. Tall in the saddle, a black hat pulled low, a long duster trailing behind. His horse moved with the steady gait of a man who never needed to hurry to be dangerous. Josie's voice was low but sharp. "Hank Maddox works for the bank, but don't let the badge fool you. He's no lawman. He's their collector." Jack shifted his weight, feeling the dry crunch of dust under his boots. "Collector of what?" "Land. Lives. Whatever they're owed or think they're owed." Hank slowed at the gate, letting it creak shut behind him. His eyes swept the yard, taking in Jack, the women, and the house. He smiled, without warmth. "Afternoon," he drawled, swinging down from his saddle. "Looks like we've got ourselves a misunderstanding to clear up." Josie crossed her arms. "We've already settled it. This ranch is ours." Hank's smile deepened, but his gaze slid to Jack. "Paperwork says otherwise. You Hargrave?" "I am." Jack kept his voice even. "Good. That saves me some trouble." Hank stepped closer, boots leaving deep prints in the dust. "Bank says you owe $200 in back taxes. Due today, you pay or I take possession." Josie laughed once, a sharp sound. "Taxes on land that's been ours 20 years? Try again." Hank didn't look at her. "This ain't your concern, Miss Rollins." Cora shifted, hand near her revolver. "Everything here's our concern." Jack's fingers brushed the folded deed in his coat. "Even if I wanted to pay, I don't have that kind of money." "Then you'd best start packing." Hank's eyes hardened. "I'll be back with men to help you along." He mounted up without another word, turning his horse toward town. The sound of hooves faded into the distance, but the tension he left behind stayed rooted in the dust. Josie broke the silence. "He'll be back before sundown, and he won't be alone." Jack looked from her to the empty trail. He'd come for land. Now he had a deadline. 2 allies he barely knew, and an enemy he couldn't yet see the edges of. The sun dipped lower, painting the horizon in fire, and Jack knew, whatever came next, there was no walking away. They stood in the fading light, the wind carrying the dry scent of dust and sage. Jack could hear the faint cluck of hens in the coop, the creak of the porch boards beneath Josie's boots. "He means to run you off before dark," Josie said flatly. "Once the sheriff's with him, your deed won't matter a lick." Cora leaned against the porch post, eyes scanning the empty trail. "Sheriff's been in the bank's pocket for years. Won't bother asking questions, just sign whatever Hank puts in front of him." Jack's jaw tightened. "Then we get to someone who'll listen. A judge, somebody with more backbone than a banker." Josie's eyes narrowed. "Closest honest judges in Whitcomb County. 3 days. Ride, maybe 2 if you push hard. Hank will be back in hours." "Then we ride tonight," Jack said. "Bring the proof you've got, your father's deed, anything else." Cora gave a short laugh. "You think this is just about paper? They've been bleeding this county dry for years. Families vanish. Land changes hands, no questions asked. We've seen what happens when folks take them to court. They don't make it to the courthouse." "Maybe they haven't had someone willing to see it through," Jack said. Josie studied him for a long moment, as though weighing more than just his words. Finally, she spoke. "You take this on, you'll be marked same as us. No ranch, no peace, no going back." "I didn't come here to steal from anyone," Jack said, his voice steady. "If the bank's lying, I'll see it known." The last of the sunlight slipped behind the hills, and the shadows stretched long over the yard. Josie turned toward the house. "If we go ready. We'll need food, rifles, and a way to leave without them seeing us." Cora stepped off the porch, heading toward the barn. "And pray we're not already too late." In the distance, faint but growing, came the sound of more hoofbeats. They left under cover of night, the ranch shrinking behind them into a dark shape against the prairie. The moon was thin and high, the stars cold and sharp. Jack rode point, scanning the trail ahead, Josie and Cora close behind with their father's deed and a small bundle of supplies. By dawn, the outlines of Redford appeared. One dusty main street, a scattering of buildings, and the bank at its center. But something was wrong. The street was too quiet. No wagons rattling past, no children running between storefronts. A pair of horses stood tied outside the bank, both saddled heavy, their reins loose. Josie's voice was low. "That's not enough to guard a place if Hank's inside. Where's the rest?" They moved further in, the empty windows watching them like eyes. A flicker of movement at the far end of the street caught Jack's attention. 3 riders slipping out from behind the livery, spreading wide to block their retreat. Cora muttered, "There's your rest." Before Jack could answer, the bank door swung open. A man stepped out. Not Hank, but someone taller, broader, dressed in a fine gray suit that didn't belong in a town like this. His polished boots clicked against the porch boards, and when he looked at them, the smile on his face didn't touch his eyes. "Mr. Hargrave, I presume?" he called, voice smooth as oiled leather. "And the Rollins sisters. I was beginning to wonder if you'd take my invitation." Josie's hand tightened on her rifle. "We weren't invited." "Oh, you were," the man said, stepping down to the street. Hank was simply less subtle about it. Behind them, more riders emerged from side alleys, the ring closing. Jack counted at least 8, all armed, all watching. The man in the suit stopped 10 paces away. "Why don't we have a conversation inside? Much more comfortable than out here." Jack didn't move. "And if we say no?" The man's smile widened just enough to show teeth. "Then I'm afraid this conversation will be very short." From every direction, saddles creaked and rifles shifted in waiting hands. The man in the suit waited, calm as a preacher at a funeral. Around them, the ring of riders tightened, iron shoes scraping against hard-packed dirt. Jack could feel the women tensing behind him. Josie's whisper was sharp. "We're not walking into that bank. Last time we were inside, they locked the doors and sent for the sheriff." Cora's eyes flicked toward the church steeple at the far end of the street. "There's a trail behind the chapel. Drops into the dry wash. If we can reach it, they'll lose us in the gullies." Jack gave the smallest nod. "On my mark." The suited man spread his arms. "Come now, you've already come this far." Jack smiled faintly. "Far enough." He yanked his reins hard, spinning his gelding toward the church. Josie and Cora kicked their mounts forward in the same breath. Shouts erupted. Rifles snapped up. The air cracked with gunfire as they charged, hooves pounding like a war drum. A rider lunged to cut them off, but Cora's shot knocked his hat spinning into the dust. The sudden gap gave them room to break through, racing past the clapboard chapel and plunging down the narrow trail. The dry wash twisted between high banks, the sound of pursuit echoing close behind. A bullet whined past Jack's shoulder, splintering a mesquite branch. Josie leaned low over her saddle, urging her horse faster. They rounded a bend and found the wash splitting into 2 forks. Without slowing, Josie veered left. "They'll expect us to keep east," she shouted. Behind them, the noise of hooves grew louder, closer, hungrier. Jack risked a glance back. The suited man hadn't followed, but 6 riders had, and they were gaining. The wash narrowed into a cut barely wide enough for a single horse. The sound of water trickled ahead, an old spring. Josie pulled up sharply, swinging from the saddle. "We hide here. Let them ride past." Jack slid down beside her, heart hammering. In the stillness, the thunder of pursuit drew near, then right over their heads. They waited until the dust settled, the riders' shouts fading into the distance. Josie met Jack's eyes. That was their welcome. Next time, they'll come to finish it. They stayed in the shadow of the wash until the last echo of hoofbeats was gone. Only the rasp of wind over stone and the distant cry of a hawk broke the silence. Jack listened a moment longer before stepping back into the sunlight. "Where now?" he asked. Josie glanced toward the low ridge to the west. "There's an old line shack up in the hills. My father kept it stocked. Food, tools, maybe a spare rifle if the rust hasn't taken it." We can hole up there till nightfall." They climbed out of the wash and angled for the ridge. The trail was narrow and steep, the kind that punished careless hooves. At the crest, the shack came into view, a leaning structure of gray boards, half hidden by juniper. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of old wood smoke. Cora went straight to the corner, knelt, and began prying up a warped floorboard. From beneath, she pulled a bundle wrapped in oilcloth. Jack raised a brow. "You been hiding something out here?" Cora set the bundle on the table and peeled the cloth back, revealing a neat stack of papers, some brittle and yellowed, others newer. "These are bank records," she said, "not just ours. Half the county's deeds, transfers, and foreclosures. Every crooked sale they've pulled in the last 10 years. Jack skimmed the top page, his pulse quickening. Names, dates, forged signatures. It was all here. "This is enough to bury them." Josie shook her head. "It's enough to get us all killed before we can use it. The bank's got more than hired guns. They've got judges, politicians. We need someone outside their reach." "Judge Whitcomb," Cora said quietly. "He's in Whitcomb County. Only man I know who turned the bank away from his bench." Jack looked at the papers again, then out toward the empty hills. "Then Whitcomb's where we take this." Josie met his eyes. "It's 2 days through open country. If they guess where we're headed." "They will," Jack said. "Question is, who finds who first?" By late afternoon, the hills fell away to a wide, wind-scoured plain. The sun glared off pale grass and scattered rock, no cover for miles. Jack kept them moving east, setting a pace that would push their horses but not break them. "Fastest way to Whitcomb County's through Maddox Canyon," Josie said, riding up beside him. "Cut straight through the Badlands, save us a day." Cora's voice was tight. "And cost us our lives. That canyon's a choke point. Perfect place for an ambush." "They'll be hunting us no matter which way we ride," Jack answered. "Shorter we're on the trail, better our odds." The decision sat heavy between them, but Josie finally nodded. "Then we ride Maddox." By sundown, the land began to rise again, the canyon mouth a dark gash in the hills ahead. Long shadows crawled from the stone walls, turning the entrance into a black maw. They stopped just short of it, watering the horses at a shallow creek. Jack crouched by the bank, scanning the ground. "Tracks," he murmured. "Fresh, maybe half a day ahead of us. More than one set." Cora's hand brushed the stock of her rifle. "Could be travelers." "Could be," Jack said, but his eyes stayed on the narrowing trail. The wind shifted, carrying with it a faint metallic tang. "Gun oil." Jack rose slowly. "We keep close to the walls, ride quiet, and if you see so much as a shadow move, you call it." They entered single file, the sound of hooves muffled by sand. The canyon swallowed them in cool shade, the walls climbing higher until only a ribbon of sky remained above. Every creak of leather, every stone knocked loose seemed too loud. Halfway in, Josie hissed, "Up top, left side." A glint flashed on the rim. Then came the first rifle shot. The crack of the rifle split the canyon air, the bullet striking stone inches from Jack's head. Chips of rock stung his cheek as he yanked his gelding toward the wall. "Cover!" he barked. Josie swung her horse in tight, bringing her rifle up. Cora slid from her saddle entirely, using the animal's flank as a shield while she fired up toward the ridge. Her shot answered with a shout and the clatter of falling rock. More gunfire erupted from the opposite rim, at least 4 rifles working in concert. The echo turned the canyon into a drum of chaos. "They're boxed us!" Cora yelled. "Not yet," Jack called back. He spurred forward, urging them toward a bend ahead where the walls pinched together. "We make that turn, they'll lose sight." They rode hard, bullets hissing past, horses snorting in panic. Josie's second shot took a figure off the left wall. He tumbled out of sight. The canyon narrowed, the shadows deepening. Just before the turn, Jack spotted a narrow break in the right wall, a steep side ravine, choked with brush. In there, one at a time, they forced their mounts up the slope, hooves scrabbling on loose rock. Shots chased them, but the brush quickly swallowed the sound. At the top, they found an abandoned mining shack clinging to the hillside. The roof sagged, and the door hung crooked, but it offered shelter. Inside, Jack caught his breath, peering through a gap in the boards. Shadows moved along the canyon floor below, 6 men at least, fanning out, searching. Josie reloaded in silence. Cora's eyes never left the trail. "They know we're here," Jack said quietly. And then, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of footsteps outside the shack. The footsteps stopped just beyond the sagging wall. Jack's hand slid to his Colt, eyes locked on the crooked doorway. A shadow moved across the gap. Then another. 2 men, maybe more. Josie mouthed, "Wait." A voice called from outside, lazy but sharp. "We can do this the easy way, folks. Toss down them papers, come out slow, and we'll let you walk." Cora muttered, "They always say that." A faint scraping sound followed. Then the sharp scent of kerosene drifted in through the gaps. Jack's Srufasok turned. "They're gonna burn us out." The first match flared under the eaves, then another at the rear. Flames licked up the brittle boards, smoke curling through the cracks. Heat pressed in fast, stifling. "No choice now," Jack said. "We break through." Josie kicked the back door off its single hinge, the wood crashing into the brush. Cora was already moving, firing 2 quick shots toward the front to keep heads down. Jack led them out into the tangle of juniper, smoke rolling after them. Shouts rang out as the gunmen realized they'd slipped the trap. A man lunged from behind a boulder, rifle rising, but Jack bowled into him shoulder first, sending the weapon skidding away. Josie's rifle barked, and the man went still. They ran for the horses tethered in the scrub. Jack swung into the saddle and yanked his mount around, hauling Josie and Cora into motion. The burning shack lit the hillside behind them, turning the smoke into a beacon for every enemy in the canyon. As they pounded away, Jack spotted something in the saddlebags of the horse he'd taken from the boulder man, a sealed envelope, heavy with folded paper. He ripped it open as they rode. Inside was a single page of fine stationery, bearing a bold, looping signature. The message was short, but it stopped him cold. "Ensure the Rollins women and their companion do not reach Whitcomb. Payment upon completion." And at the bot Rufus, Senator Horace Kell. The name sat heavy in Jack's mind, louder than the pounding of hooves. Senator Horace Kell wasn't just some backroom schemer. He was one of the most powerful men in the territory. Land, rail contracts, half the judges in his pocket. If Kell was behind this, the bank was just the tip of the spear. Josie saw the paper in his hand. "What is it?" He passed it to her without slowing. Her eyes scanned the words, then hardened like flint. "Kell," she spat. "Figures. He's been after this land since my father first drove fence." Cora leaned closer to read, her jaw tightening. "This isn't about one ranch. It's the whole valley." Jack nodded grimly. "Every deed in those records is a step towards something bigger. Rail lines, cattle routes, maybe even mining rights. He clears out the families, the bank sells to his men, and by the time anyone notices, it's all legal on paper." Josie stuffed the letter inside her coat. "Then Whitcomb has to see it. If we get him the deeds and this letter, even Kell can't hide." "Kell doesn't have to hide," Cora said. "He'll come right at us with more men than we've seen yet." The trail bent into open country, the stars thick overhead. In the distance, a cluster of lights marked the next town. Brightwater. Josie's voice dropped. "Brightwater's his town. Sheriff, mayor, half the saloon owners. They all answer to him. We ride through. They'll spot us in minutes." "Then we don't ride through," Jack said. "We skirt the north ridge, stay in the dark. No fires, no noise, no trail to follow." The horses slowed to a trot as they entered the rolling hills beyond the canyon, but Jack knew speed wouldn't save them anymore. The man hunting them now wasn't a hired gun. He was the law, the money, and the gallows, all in one. And he was close. They rode through the night, the cold settling deep into their bones. By dawn, the hills broke into a patchwork of scrub valleys, each one quiet as a churchyard. Jack led them into a shallow draw where the wind cut low and the horses could breathe. Josie scanned the horizon. "We can't keep straight to Whitcomb. Kel will have riders spread in a fan, sweeping everything ahead of us." Cora pulled a kerchief over her mouth against the dust. "So where do we cut?" Jack thought a moment. "There's a man up here. Rufus Cole. Used to be a U.S. Marshal till a bullet in the hip sent him to pasture. He's no friend of Kel. If he's still alive, he'll know the trails that don't appear on any map." Josie's brow lifted. "You trust him?" "I owe him my life," Jack said simply. It took another 2 hours to reach Cole's spread, a weathered ranch tucked in the shelter of cottonwoods, a thin wisp of smoke curling from the chimney. A tall, raw-boned man stepped out to meet them, leaning on a cane but with eyes sharp as ever. "Hargrave?" Cole said, a slow grin breaking through his beard. "Heard you'd gone to ground in Mexico." "Ran out of ground there too," Jack replied. "We've got trouble, Rufus. Bank fraud, stolen deeds, and Senator Kel breathing down our necks." Cole's grin faded. "Kel, eh? That's a mean nest you've kicked." He looked to Josie and Cora, then to the bundle of papers in Jack's saddlebag. "You're aiming for Whitcomb, I reckon." "That's the plan," Jack said. Cole tapped his cane against the porch rail. "Then you'll need a decoy, someone to draw his men the wrong way while the rest ride clean through." Josie glanced at Jack. "That means splitting up." "It means living to see Whitcomb," Cole said. Outside, the wind carried the faint, rhythmic beat of distant hooves. The hoofbeats grew louder, a steady drum over the hills. Cole's eyes flicked toward the sound. "They've picked up your trail faster than I thought. We've got minutes, not hours." Josie looked at Jack. "If we split, who goes with who?" Cole stepped off the porch, favoring his bad leg but moving with purpose. "I'll take one of you and the papers. The other rides with Hargrave to draw the wolves." Cora shook her head. "I'm better with a rifle from the saddle. I ride with Jack." Josie started to object, but Cora's tone cut through. "You've got the deed, the letter, and the best chance of talking Whitcomb into listening. That's you." Cole handed Josie a folded map. "Cut west through Deadman's Draw, then north. Avoid Brightwater altogether. There's a ford at Willow Bend, shallow this time of year. That'll put you on Whitcomb's Road by Rufusaro night." "And you?" Josie asked Jack. He tightened his cinch, scanning the horizon. "We'll lead them toward the salt flats. Open ground. Make them think they've got us cornered, then lose them in the dust." Cole went to the barn and returned with 2 fresh horses, lean and fast. "Leave your mounts. These'll run longer without blowing." The approaching riders were close enough now that Jack could make out the dust plume. He swung into the saddle, Cora right behind him. Josie lingered a heartbeat longer, her eyes locked on Jack's. "Don't get yourself killed for a trick play." He gave a tight smile. "Not planning on it." Then they were off, spurring hard across the valley floor. The sound of pursuit swelled behind them. Angry, eager. Cora glanced back once. "They're biting. Good," Jack said, leaning low over the saddle horn. "Let's make them choke on it." The salt flats shimmered under the midday sun, a pale mirror stretching to the horizon. Jack and Cora rode hard, their shadows flickering on the white crust. Behind them, the riders fanned out, trying to close the distance. "They're not giving up," Cora called over the wind. "They don't have to," Jack answered. "They just have to keep us from Whitcomb." He angled toward a low ridge where heat ripples bent the air. At the base, a jagged wash cut deep into the flats. They plunged into it, the walls swallowing them in shade. The hoofbeats behind faltered, then followed. 2 bends ahead, Jack said. "We climb out there and double back behind the ridge." The plan worked. By the time the pursuers rounded the second bend, Jack and Cora had vanished into a maze of gullies. They waited, crouched low in the saddle, as the hunters thundered past in the wrong direction. When the dust settled, They turned north, skirting the ridge until the flats gave way to rolling prairie. In the distance, a dark smudge marked the outskirts of Whitcomb. They reached the town by late afternoon, slipping in through the back streets to avoid notice. At the courthouse steps, Josie and Cole were already there, dust-caked but standing tall. Inside, Judge Whitcomb listened without interruption as Josie laid the deeds and Kell's letter before him. He read each page slowly, his brow darkening. Finally, he looked up. "This is enough to bring charges against the bank and the senator." Relief barely had time to settle before a shout came from outside. Jack moved to the window. Half a dozen armed riders were dismounting in the street, rifles in hand. At their head, Hank Maddox scanned the building like a man choosing where to start the fire. Josie's voice was steady. "Looks like they came to hold their own court." The courthouse doors rattled as someone outside tried them. Judge Whitcomb stood from his bench, his voice carrying the weight of command. "Marshal Cole, bar those doors." Cole, leaning heavy on his cane, shoved the iron bolt into place. "They'll try the windows next." Outside, Hank Maddox's voice rang out. "Hand over the Rollins women and the papers, and no one else needs to get hurt." Jack stepped to the doorway, pushing it open just enough to be heard. "Tell Kell he'll have to take it from the judge's hands now." The reply was the sharp crack of a rifle. Splinters flew from the doorframe. Judge Whitcomb didn't flinch. He moved to the window, opening the shutters wide. "Men of Whitcomb," he called to the street. "These riders serve a thief and a traitor. The law stands here today. Stand with it." At first, only silence answered. Then, slowly, townsfolk emerged. Shopkeepers, ranch hands, even the blacksmith with his apron still on. One by one, they stepped into the street, some with rifles, others with nothing but iron in their eyes. Hank hesitated. His men shifted in their saddles, uneasy at the growing crowd. The tension stretched, brittle as dry wood. Finally, Hank spat in the dust. "Ain't worth dying for this lot." He wheeled his horse and rode out, the others following. Inside, the air eased, but no one relaxed. Judge Whitcomb gathered the deeds and the senator's letter. "These will go to the territorial capital. With this much daylight on him, Kell won't last a month." Josie exhaled slow. "And the ranch?" Whitcomb smiled faintly. "Yours, Miss Rollins, as it's always been." Later, with the sun low over the prairie, Jack stood by the fence line beside Josie and Cora. The wind carried the scent of fresh-cut hay, and for the first time since he'd arrived, the land felt quiet. Josie glanced at him. "So you staying?" Jack looked over the fields, the house, and the two women who'd fought for it. "Reckon I might." Some fights, he thought, were worth more than land. They were worth your life.